Never here from Drake Wing Game, and 70 miles word of the Gaming Dragon. Today I'm coming back at you with another Let's Play episode of Sileo, Ty's Path. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right back into it, shall we? Alarm chain, you were up, and let's go. Alright, let's see. What was the previous one? Okay. And hell, maybe Diego was right, and this whole thing was a little gay. Who cares? There ain't nothing sexual about it, except perhaps for Diego's insistence that I take inventory of each friend's downstairs loadout. And as far as I knew, each of us had an interest in men. Of course, if I was remembering correctly, both Dom and Russell were bi, which left only Axel, who I assumed to be gay, but maybe even he was liable to be flexible sometimes. Not that any of that knowledge changed anything. I was still going to be naked with 3 other dudes. And what if it was super gay? Was that a problem? Perhaps a day ago, a seemingly distant time in which I was still spoken for, there would have been valid reason for objection. But last night, that all went out the window. Had nothing to lose and nothing to fear. So yeah, this was gonna be gay as hell, and I was intent on enjoying each and every second of it to its fullest. Maybe with everything that had happened, a shot of gay like this would be exactly what the doctor ordered. Shot of gay. Jesus Christ. I could have put that differently. Yes, I'll take 1 shot of gay, please, kind sir. It had taken considerable time to complete my journey from one end of Woodcrest to the other, arriving at the hot springs with mere moments to spare. I'm probably going to have to blur some dick out in this video. Having braved the steep flight of stairs and located the unmarked path leading to the rest of the way, I took a moment to soak in my surroundings following my arrival. Not all unlike how I would soak in the piping hot waters in the minutes still to come. Besides the pathway through which I had entered, the hot springs were bordered on all sides by a dense wall consisting of shrubbery and thick intertwined trees. Even a smaller person such as Axel would not have been able to squeeze through the gaps, much less my larger self. Thus, I found no obvious indication that the hot springs had been part of another property at any point. Of course, Dom and I already knew better. I would likely have been disappointed by the lack of any breakthrough. But instead, I was far more interested in the prospect of relaxing in the steamy springs to rightly care. Looking around for somewhere discreet to get changed, I quickly laid eyes on a familiar face waiting close by who had similarly noticed me at the very same moment. Hey, my dude, good to see ya. Hey, Russell, first one here? You know it. The other 2 said they were, on the way a little while ago. Kinda thought they'd be here by now. You can't be, far off now. I see. And here I was thinking I was cutting it close. Better than being late, my dude. But, hey, about last night. It was then I realized that I hadn't thought about Ty for a little while, not since before I'd left home. For a moment, the knot in my stomach seemed as though it didn't exist. For a moment, it seemed as though things were normal instead of such a complicated and confusing mess. But the uncertainty on Russell's face clued me in on his feeling. He wanted to know the outcome, but fearing the worst, he hesitated to ask the question. Luckily for him, he wouldn't have to, as I spoke up to fill him in on our rather unhappy conclusion. Well, short version is, you and I are no longer co-workers, and no longer romantically involved with anyone. Oh, I'm so, sorry, my dude, that's horrible, man. Are you, doing okay and stuff? Surprisingly, I am. I'm not sad or grieving or anything like that. I'm just mad. Which is, well, easier to parse, I suppose you could say. Any ideas why you, feel that way, my dude? You seem like such a close-knit couple. I can't believe it doesn't hurt at least, a little. I only have theories. The day before you and I met was the day we got back together. We'd run into some trouble before that time. It definitely hurt. And through all of this, he insisted on keeping certain things from me. Maybe I was prepared for it this time. Subconsciously I was expecting it. Maybe because of that, my feelings never quite developed in the same way they had before. Are you sure, my dude? Because, from where I was sitting, you 2 seemed kinda made for each other. If I'm, completely honest, it was a little awkward at times. Felt like Axe and I were the 3rd and 4th wheel. I was worried you'd get into some mischief and I'd have to, shield his eyes. At least you had, the decency to do it away from camp. Aw, hell, you did know after all. Of course, my dude, your cover story was totally flimsy, man. Sorry, we had you set up camp while we were off, frolicking. It was the least we could do. Without you guys, you'd never ever been able to be there, but... And never mind, my dude, that stuff is not, important or anything. Sure you're, doing okay, my man? I am. Thanks for the concern, Russell. Anytime, my dude, and for what it's worth, I'll miss working with you, even if it was, only for a day. We'll keep in touch, right? Of course. We've got mutuals out the wazoo. I reckon we'll see each other often, even if only by pure accident. Rad, my dude. Hope that doesn't, mean you won't put in an effort in anything, though. Of course not. Looking forward to it. Me too, my dude. Me too. Whoa, we got company. Hey, Hunter! Hey, Russ! Hey, guys! Well, look at the early birds. Hey, my dudes, and for like the record, we're not early. You dudes are just totally late. Dom quickly checked the time on his wristwatch in response to Russell's allegation, and the answer it gave was clearly something Dom hadn't anticipated. What do you know? So we are. Axel wanted to stop for ice cream along the way, and there was a bit of a line. Ice cream? Come on, Ax, you of all people know about the 30-minute rule. Of course, that's why I did it. It's never made me sick before. In cold water, sure, but what about in hot? I'm sure it'll be fine. It's just a silly myth to stop little kids messing up the pool. But why do you think they mess up the pool in the first place, little dude? Oh. Let it be known you're now the second person to have warned him. The first being yours truly, of course. I take no responsibility if anything happens. Feel bad for the owner of the place, my dude. Cleaning puke out of a hot spring? Ain't my idea of a fun afternoon or whatever. Dom shrugged with a half-hearted smile, no doubt worried how things may proceed, but nonetheless hoping for the best. Russell just beamed his standard toothy smile before Dom spoke up again, clearly eager to make a start on the next step of the process. Alright, y'all, give me 1 second. It's water time. Alright, guys and gals, and we are back. Let's go ahead and jump back into it, shall we? Well, it's, kind of chilly out, so, the sooner we, don the appropriate attire, the sooner we can warm ourselves up. So tradition is tradition, right? Ready for action, my dudes, whenever you're ready. Where are the changing rooms? Well, you see, there are none. Oh no. Was I seriously the only one who'd recognized Dom's statement for what it truly was? It was dead clear that warming up was a secondary objective to him. His primary objective was instead one that would be filled before we'd even reach the water. Of course, I couldn't be too hard on him. It was clear he'd been crushing on Axel for a long time that it almost seemed odd that he hadn't yet gotten a peek, especially them being so close. Weren't they now living together too? Besides, considering the task Diego had asked of me during this outing, I really couldn't judge. And perhaps permitting Dom to pursue his own terrible objectives would, by extension, assist in achieving mine. Regardless, I decided to have a little fun at Dom's expense by way of punishment for his very own vile deeds. You sure seem eager, Dom. Looking forward to something? I mean, duh, I can't wait to hop in the water. I flashed Dom a sly grin, whose meaning he clearly understood. I knew exactly what he was up to, and now he also knew that I knew, which meant that I had him by his strings, powerless to resist any instruction or request I might have had. Thankfully for him, I would keep his intentions a secret, so long as he, in fairness to the others, took the lead. And besides, Diego had asked for it after Dom's specifications as well. Of course, and who could blame you? Seeing as you're so eager to get started, maybe you'd like to start things off. Dom held my gaze, look in his eyes a subtle acknowledgement of my play and his concession to my terms. Of course, I wouldn't have told anybody regardless, but it was a good excuse to make him go first. Sure as hell didn't want to be. Alright, that seems fair. Dom took a deep breath to soothe his stage fright. Coming here was his idea. Seeing Axel's junk was his primary motivation, and it was only fair and he knew it. And naked. Oh my. The scene that followed almost made me feel sorry for Dom. He stood before the three of us with each and every set of eyes fixed on his naked body. Axel looked on in surprise, or was it interest? Perhaps with a twist of satisfaction. It seemed as though he liked what he saw. Russell maintained a better degree of composure witnessing such a candid exhibition, his eyes wandering with little restraint, but his expression and body language remained largely unchanged. As for me, well, I, too, had borne witness to Dom's family jewels, for science. As one of three so far, Diego would be pleased, as several inches below Dom's navel sat a fuzzy candied sheath whose contents were no doubt a match for both Diego's and my own. Remembering the time I'd seen Diego's, I couldn't help but compare sizes. Something that had bothered me since that day was how much bigger Diego's seemed to be compared to my own. Not that I'd seen him full-mast, but I nonetheless derived a sense of insecurity from what I had seen on that day. Diego's height was practically the same as my own, and his larger stature was near exclusively derived from his weight and muscularity. Merely 2 years prior, our body compositions were a close match. It didn't make any sense, and perhaps I wondered from time to time, was he just big, or was I just small? Which is why I stood, my eyes incapable of doing anything but processing what I was seeing, a sense of, relief washing over me. My own height was somewhat below average for a husky, but Dom's height, at least several inches shorter than my own, was about that was typical for a red fox. Not that height had much to do with anything, of course, but it helped with the sense of scale, and seeing that Dom's admittedly shapely sheath and curiously fuzzy balls were similarly smaller than my own, I once again felt as though all was right in the world. Except Diego, of course. He was just a freak of nature. Guys, can you not? Dom's hand briefly drifted towards his groin, his instinct to conceal himself from our prying eyes, and he stopped midway, returning his hand slowly to its former position, as he no doubt realized it was much too late. We'd seen it all. Truthfully, I felt bad for putting Dom in such an embarrassing situation, although I hadn't rightly expected everybody else to have as much of a disregard for his privacy as my own. Our reasons no doubt differed, of course. I suspected Russell's viewing to be a simple act of curiosity, while Axel's? Perhaps he was seeing what the future might have in store. With that being the case, I was definitely the least creepy person here. For me, it was simply a matter of education. Education that would in turn educate another. If you really think about it, what I was doing was almost noble. Yeah, I didn't quite believe that was true, even though it was a nice attempt at self-deception. And comparing sizes, quite clearly I was the worst. But hey, at least I was a free agent, and I could have been much, much worse. Guys, stop staring and get undressed. Nobody responded to Dom's pleas, not least himself. Perhaps I was foolish to expect that after encouraging Dom to debut, that he would not return the favor in kind. Hunter, I went first, so you have to go next. No arguments. I sighed while nodding a reluctant grin of defeat. I'd brought this on myself. God, were they all going to look at mine the same way? Would they like what they saw? Would it really matter if they did? I was single. Maybe one of them would like it so much that they want to take it home with them. And say they did. Would I accept? Why not, right? Who was going to stop me? Ty? Feeling a surge of confidence and reckless abandon, I began to remove each article of clothing. And perhaps I'd look back on this and cringe someday, but I even deliberately slowed pace, the body coming to view piece by piece of what almost became a dance. Hell yeah, so penis! Voila! With my underwear crowning the pile of freshly discarded clothing off to my side, I stood in the spotlight, my hips thrust forward and shoulders raised in assertive confidence as my admirers looked on, their hearts and minds enthralled by my... Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pause it right there, y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and check out our Patreon and YouTube memberships if you can. It always helps. But anyway, I love you all, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye!